I'll touch on just a couple of things here. I'm going to open up a new project. So this rather complicated looking mess of stuff is what I call a scratch project, and it's where I'm working on some defects. So I'm creating a bunch of stuff that I think is cool or interesting, or literally things that I want to be able to make once, save to my library, and never have to create again. One thing that I found in creating a lot of these kinds of things is, especially if I want to use interesting elements or things like that, I want to create stuff that I can use that's cool and interesting. So things like lower thirds and all of that good stuff are certainly assets that we can create. Let's go to the end here and I'll zoom in on the timeline. Maybe just give you a couple of tips on my kind of process here if you would like to create such things on your own or experiment with stuff. So I'm going to go to the Annotations tab here, and let's say I just want to make a box or something. Well, the annotations, if you go to like shapes, they have a few basic shapes. So making a box is no big deal, making circles and making triangles. But what you'll notice is that as far as maybe other interesting shapes, they're pretty limited. You got your star, you got this stop sign looking dealy, you got a triangle, which you can't change the angles on, by the way. So that's pretty limited. And there's all this duplication of stuff. For the life of me, I can't figure out the difference between this outline box and this outline box, except for the color, or this one, or this one. So there's all this stuff in here, but the shapes are really basic. So one of the things I've kind of taken to is creating some of my own shapes and then being able to use them in cool things like lower thirds or callouts. Create stuff like that, save it to my library, and then we'll bundle them up and put them out for folks. Well, one of the easiest ways I found to do that is to actually use PowerPoint. So I'm going to jump over here for just a second. I'll give you a couple of top tips and tricks for kind of doing some cool stuff yourself. Here, I'm just kind of working on some shapes and things like that. These are going to be some kind of cool callouts that we can use, stuff like that. And again, this is just like a scratch file. All I literally do here is I start screwing around with stuff. And let me kind of give you some of the things that I found as a result of screwing around with stuff. So let me give you a quick example here. Let's find something. So here, these are just a couple of screen clippings that I found on VideoHive. VideoHive is a place where you can find thousands of lower thirds and stuff like that. So here I'm kind of working on lower thirds. I'll find me an example, and then in PowerPoint, all I do is I just kind of rip it off. And I look for things that have shapes. This is literally just a shape in PowerPoint, and I draw it out, and then I just start, putting stuff here and there, and all of a sudden, bam, I've got me kind of a shape thingy. Or here's a good example for maybe a call out that I want to come up from the bottom in the video. This is a custom shape that I created. It's just a little more elegant, smooth, and interesting than just having a square box come up in Camtasia, which I could do, right? I could take a call out and I could add it to the timeline, and I could do this. I could make it bigger, and I could have it come up from the bottom, something like that, right? Maybe put some text in here or whatever. I want something a little more interesting. So this would be an example of a shape that I create. In PowerPoint, if you go to Insert, Shapes, you have all these shapes, and they're all fully customizable. So yeah, here's the stop sign thing that we have. It's a hexagon that we have in Camtasia, but you can, how about a lightning bolt? So here I could create my own graphic, and here's kind of the secret sauce. And I'll show you the trick that I like to use for this. So let's take our lightning bolt. Let's make it kind of big so that it's good high quality. I'm going to take the outline off, no outline, and I'm also going to do this little trick. I'm going to click on it, and for the shape fill, I'm going to use this guy right here, this shade of gray. It's called white background 1 darker 50%. So let's change that color. And you'll notice that a lot of my stuff in my Scratch project here is this exact color. I'll tell you why in just a second. So if we right click on that and look at the fill, I'll go to more fill colors. I want to show you what the fill color is. It's RGB 127, 127, 127, right? So here's why that's going to be useful for us. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to save as picture. And let's just call it lightning. Okay, save it as a PNG file, PNG image, so that it has transparency. And now let's go to Camtasia, and let's go find that image. There it is, lightning. Now I want to put that on the timeline. Okay, and it's gray. Well, here's the thing that I like about that particular shade of gray. If I right click on this on the canvas and go to add visual effects, I'm going to add a colorize effect. And you'll notice here is the shade of green, and see how beautifully it changes the color of my callout here. If I change it to red or whatever this color is, it's pretty darn close. And the reason it's pretty darn close is that the colorize feature only works on certain, I'll call it, I don't want to get too technical, I'll call it shades of gray for a non-technical term. 127, 127, 127 RGB values is a pretty darn good shade of gray. So let's think about what I have here now. I now have a custom object that I can change the color of. If I use a callout, well, I can change the colors of callouts, can't I? Right? If we go to the Annotations properties, I can change the color. And that is a very handy and useful thing to be able to do. But if you have an image, you can't really do that because it's technically not a callout that's inside of Camtasia. It's just an image. But by using this little trick, what we can do is create our own custom images, even just from something as simple as shapes, or there's another trick you can do with fonts, like wingding fonts. You can find all kinds of icons and stuff like that right inside of PowerPoint. But, just any kind of custom shape that you can create. And as you can see here, I've created me all kinds of them. Okay, even something simple as like this curved space that I could, put in my project to make my canvas look a little more interesting and all that good stuff. Crosses, shapes, pluses, even a couple of double lines, or using some of the other formatting features in PowerPoint to be able to create more and interesting shapes. And then I can drop them in and they can be colorized. So they immediately become more useful because, well, I don't have to have a red version of this PNG file. I don't have to create a blue version and, all that good stuff. So that's how you can do it using shapes. Let me show you one other trick. And let's see here. Out there on the interwebs, there are thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands even of these kinds of things that you can get. This is called a filter or a mask, okay? And let's say that I kind of want to have some of these types of things as those shapes that I can use. So this isn't a shape in PowerPoint, it's a picture. In fact, let's click here. Here's a little bit of a sample. So here I have just some icons that I found. Actually, these are from our buddy Peter over at callouts.com. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like these. I might want to use them in such a thing. Maybe this approve icon. So let me grab this and we'll drop it into PowerPoint. So again, the secret here is that this is red. Well, I don't want it red. I want it to be that gray that I can then easily change the color in Camtasia using the Colorize effect. So here's kind of how you do that with any kind of image. So this is a PNG image. It has transparency. So here's how you do that. I'll click on it. I will go to Format. And then since it's a picture, I get the picture effects here. And what I'm looking for is the color effect. And I want to choose this guy right here. Gray accent, 3 color highlight. So yeah, there, boom, there you go. You'll notice that it kind of changed that to that gray that I like. But here's the caveat with the picture. This isn't strictly, a 127, 127, 127, which is my prime color, the one that I really want, and you can't really get there. So what I'm going to do is also under that color, there are 2 other parameters here we can screw around with. One is called saturation, so I'm going to take that up to the max, and also color tone, take that up to the max. It's a very subtle kind of a difference, but I'll demo the difference for you in just a second. So those are your basically 3 steps. You can take any kind of thing that you find on the internet, primarily solid colors, right? So these icons are a solid color. So this trick works pretty well. Most things like these masks and stuff like that are a solid color. All you do then is right click, save as picture, same deal as before, save it as a PNG, and I think I did that for a couple here already, so let me see if I can find those. I'm going to take both of these, this guy and this guy. We'll put them on the timeline. And I have 2 versions here for a reason. I'll show you what that is in just a second here. Let's highlight them both, right click on the canvas, add visual effect, and colorize. And I think what I'm going to do is I'll change it to a different color. Maybe this color. Okay. So the one on the right here, like I say, it's a very subtle difference, but maybe you can pick it out. Do these 2 images look exactly the same? Is there a difference between these 2 images? And let's kind of make it a little bigger here. So, yeah, I think the one on the right, as Larry correctly notes, is pinker. That's because the one on the right does not have this little modification here, the saturation and color tone. It has the default 0 saturation and low color temperature. In other words, it's just this recolor option. Okay, but if you crank it up, crank those 2 up with the trick that I showed you, then you get a much more accurate representation. The gray works better when it's a little hotter, basically. It's kind of the way to look at that. And that's because of the way the Colorize feature works. Okay, one more tip for you. So where do you find stuff like this? Well, you can find it everywhere. You can go to Icon Finder and find hundreds of icons and stuff like that. I'll just give you a few more examples here. these are images, again, out there just freely available. Might make kind of a neat call out, right? So we'll go to Format, Color, pick this guy, Color, kick up the saturation, and kick up the tone. Save this as an image, and the same trick for changing the colors in Camtasia works. Thousands of these kinds of things. Well, in some of the PowerPoint templates that I like to use, I think this is from the Video Wide collection. So what I do a lot of times is I will take a template like this that I have, and I don't know, look, guess what? There's all kinds of stuff here on these slides. So maybe I want me a ink splat effect, to put on a screen, or a grungy thing, or anything like that. So you can use this trick to take images like this and then kick them out so that you can use them. Brush strokes are a great example. Here's a brush stroke that came from that slide. Here's a spray paint drip kind of a thing. So a little bit of splatter, all that good stuff. So you can create and use your own types of assets pretty easily, make them very customizable as to the color. Let's see what we have in my screwing around folder of creating some stuff. Let's take this kind of grunge dealy here. And I think for this, we'll put it on top of just a picture. This could be put on top of a video clip or anything else we want. I'll show you a couple of other options for you. So let's take our guy here. Let's drop it on top. Okay, that looks kind of ugly, right? But let's say we'll just make it a little bigger. And we'll right click on it, add our colorize effect. That's a little bright and nasty. I'll pick like maybe a little lighter tone. But then you can also play with things like the opacity. So now what I can do is I can add a layer of depth and texture of any color that I choose to my video content. And of course, we can apply any animations or anything like that we want to it also. But it was just a stupid image, actually a collection of images that I found that were all these kinds of grunge patterns. Where are they? Stuff like this or that. And make like a vignette out of this. This would probably been a better example to demo, in fact. And then maybe something a little more subtle. But you can, again, then make it as subtle as you want. And it just adds like a filter effect kind of a thing. Right, sweet. So those are some things that you can do kind of fun and creatively right inside of PowerPoint. All kinds of fun and interesting things. I think these are just squares that I subtracted out. So everything in white here will be transparent. So could I take something like this? Have I tried this yet? Have I exported this? Let's do it. Here we go. Grid overlay. Let's see what happens when we do something like that. Let's take our grid overlay. And again, this isn't necessarily a real product. It's just something I was screwing around with. Let's put that there. And colorize it. And certainly I could save out specific colored versions in PowerPoint if I wanted to. But, I don't know. I kind of like this for flexibility. There you go. That makes a whole another slide or a whole different level of interesting visual effect. But you'll see I've kind of done it with all kinds of fun and interesting types of things. Okay, let's try this. Let's go to Insert Icons. If you don't know this, right inside of PowerPoint you have all kind of icons. Right? So if I wanted to create a a version that can be colorized. Let's just add this dude right here. And these are all fully scalable. So I would make him big. And then what? So let's go to Format, Graphics Fill. And again, here's your secret guy right here. This lowest one on the first rung of color variation. And this might vary depending upon what theme you're using. But if you want to make sure, then you go to Fill, More Fill Colors, and change your RGB to 127, 127, oops, 127. Okay, so I could save this guy out, and yeah, that's a whole myriad of other visual elements that you can create and all that good stuff. So you can use shapes or icons right in PowerPoint, or import PNG images and then use the recolor feature. Here's some cool things that I found. One more time just to reiterate. And usually I will make these, bigger. Because if you make them too small and then try to stretch them out in Camtasia, they can get blurry and pixelated. Sometimes there's a fine line as to how big you can make something, depending upon how high resolution it is. Let's go to Format. It's a picture, so we'll use the recolor. Pick this guy right here and boost up the. Let's right click and format picture. These things are also over here under picture. Picture? Yeah. So picture color, and you can find the same settings right here. So boom, that's recolor, saturation 400. Yeah, nice. Those are fun, and you can have a ball, knock yourself out, and leverage other stuff that's out there.